Welcome Virgo to your in-depth monthly forecast for November 2024 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. Please see beneath this video to view your year 2025 Zodiac forecast. You can also order your personal forecast for next year now, get the rest of this year free, and also your life roadmap report and 30% off. Please see below for that too. On the screen now, I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the month. As ever, we need to be mindful of the two luminaries, the Sun and the Moon, but also your ruling planet of Mercury. Now, the Moon's just about to apply in an exact conjunction with the Sun as we enter November with the new Moon. But right at the start of the day, the Moon is squaring off to both Mars and also Pluto, so a T-square. Now, the opposition between Mars and Pluto is one of the big events of this month. You can see that Mars is in your 11th house as this month begins. That's very much about your future plans, your group interactions, your network, but also it's your higher principles. It can be to do with good fortune. Mars in Cancer can be a bit sensitive, sometimes a bit defensive. That opposition between the position of Mars and Pluto suggests that keeping all of the people happy all of the time could prove to be something of a challenge as you come into this new month. Yet on the face of it, with your ruler Mercury sparkling away in your third house, which gives it a very Gemini kind of vibe at the start of the month, that suggests some quick moving and exciting news sharing. And it's true that Mercury is in an opposition with Uranus. Uranus right at the top of your chart in the ninth house, so very influential, very close to that angle. And that's saying to you that how you proceed in terms of your interests needs to have a sense of variety and stimulation to keep you engaged. But you could find yourself feeling a little bit highly strung as you go into this new month. And if you do encounter a friend or perhaps someone you're more romantically involved with who has different values to you, I feel that that's what could come out right at the start of the month because of the Moon in a disassociate way being in a T-square with that opposition. But, ironically, Mercury, your ruler, forges a gorgeous alliance with Mars, but also Neptune. Neptune's in the part of your chart to do with relationships. If there is a friend that you can collaborate with, that you do have that sense of connection, maybe you can bring different qualities to complement one another, there are and are going to be some opportunities this month. But what about that new moon on the 1st? A third house new moon is likely to see an increase in the pace of life. If you're up for that, that can create some extra excitement. Think about what you want to achieve over the next 6 months in terms of learning, sharing ideas you've got, perhaps a new mode of transport, perhaps you want to update your technology in some way, whether it's through software or through some hardware. And that combination can certainly spur you on. But when it comes to a family relationship, the fact that Venus and Saturn are in a square does point towards some potential complications, particularly as your ruler on the 2nd will move into Sagittarius to join up with Venus. Now initially, Venus is squaring with Saturn, but Mercury is going to repeat that square in the second week of this month. And that can create some tensions. For example, if you're trying to discuss upcoming arrangements for the festivities, you might find that someone seems cool, a bit detached, maybe a little unpresent, which could feel frustrating for you. However, by the 3rd, the opposition between Mars and Pluto, which has been building up through the last week of September, reaches a furnace-like peak. If we think about what the planets represent, they're the co-rulers of the sign of Scorpio. So Scorpio energy very much to the fore this month, and that can be intense, it can be direct, it can be unbending, it can be quite confrontational. So if something around your future in terms of a friendship or a romance isn't quite chiming with you in terms of the conversation about that, that could all come to a boil at this point. Also on the 4th, Mars moves into your 12th house. It's going to be there through in forward direction to the 6th of December. It then will go into a retrograde. So the last part of this year is going to see some old issues potentially come into the open. You may be surprised if some past incidents, perhaps you had an accident, perhaps you had an angry exchange or separation with someone in your past. You may have felt that your relationship to those events had been completed, that you'd come to a point of peace. But you may find with Mars in the 12th house that old energies can get stirred up, and that can actually be quite challenging. Just be aware of that. And of course, Mars still, even in Leo, retains a broad opposition to Pluto in the part of your chart to do with your love life or creative situation. But then you can use Mars in the 12th house in a productive way. Are there old skills and talents or even an old contact which could be reused or redeployed in a more imaginative way? You also have on the 7th your ruler going into its pre-retrograde shadow. So that's when Mercury starts to slow down in your 4th house. But having Venus there too at this point for the next few days could see you thinking a lot about your home and emotional situation. The great news, however, is that on the 11th, Venus moves to join up briefly with Pluto in your 5th house. If you are happily ensconced in a relationship, you can certainly celebrate it for the following week with Venus and Pluto together in that area. It brings a greater sense of understanding of the benefits of that involvement. But equally, if you don't have a relationship and you'd like to have one and have perhaps gone through some big events since 2008 with Pluto in Capricorn, and also over the last couple of years with Saturn in your 7th house, you could feel quite mournful in some ways, particularly with Mars in that 12th house. But all of this is giving you the opportunity to clear the decks for a new beginning, a new fresh beginning. And if you are footloose and fancy free, Venus being in Capricorn can certainly give your sense of attractiveness and allure a huge boost, so do enjoy its attentions. On the 15th, your relationship sector also gets a release with Saturn going forwards. It's tracking back over the previous 5 months has probably made some involvement seem rather serious or rather onerous. But on the same day, ironically, we have a full moon in your sister Earth sign of Taurus, but that's very close to Uranus. And in week 3, the Sun faces up to Uranus. So if there is a situation that you do feel hemmed in by, that you feel is not allowing you to breathe, it could be a job, it could be a responsibility, could be an obligation, or it could be a relationship, you may find yourself wanting to break free really quite spontaneously. Now, it's not like you to do something without a great deal of thought, but don't forget this month begins with the potential for intensity and a lot of electricity, and I feel the Sun going opposite Uranus and threaded through that full moon ramps up that potential once more. Mars being in the 12th house can also see us want to close down something. Mars can be about desire, so it could be around an attraction you've had. But on the 19th, with Pluto moving into Aquarius for the 3rd time, we had 11 weeks in 23, from the 21st of January this year to the 2nd of September. It's going to shine a light on a part of your situation which usually you have a reputation of having working very efficiently, which is everyday structures, the basic organisation of your situation, your approach to health and fitness, your work. But you know, Pluto has a tendency to reveal things that we may not necessarily see. So, for example, your understanding and perception of your relationship to these parts of your life could go through huge transformations through to 2043 and 44 as Pluto makes its way through Aquarius, because Pluto is about transformation. It can be about control, it can be about power, but essentially it's about what needs to transform. Sometimes Pluto will guide us towards something that needs changing and we'll resist it. But what can happen then is it can create issues. If we go with the flow and accept that sometimes, even if we don't feel quite ready for an alteration, that alteration can be profoundly good for us. So, for example, you might be in a job that you feel is very steady, gives you a lot of what you need, but it doesn't at heart really fulfill you. And that can be the type of situation that Pluto calls out to you about, pushing you to be more experimental and open to a different opportunity. Same with your approach to fitness, diet, health. You may have some pretty well calibrated approaches, but they could all be up for further review. And if you're open to it, you can go with the flow in a really positive way. But on the 21st, the Sun moves to join up with Mercury in the sign of Sagittarius. The fourth house, very much to do with how we feel about things, our family relationships, anything to do with protectiveness and shelter and security. But on the 26th, Mercury in this area goes into a retrograde. It's not going to emerge from that until mid-December, but also it won't emerge from the post-retrograde shadow until early next year. So it is going to be really important that you're diving deep and understanding the needs that you have in terms of where you live, who with and how, but also getting much more penetrated into your inner emotional world. So with Mars in the 12th house, the Sun and Mercury in retrograde in your 4th house, this is a huge opportunity for personal growth. And also the Sun does forge a great link with Pluto as it moves into Sagittarius, a sextile. And if you did, for example, wanted to work from home, or you wanted to use your natural talent for hobby crafting and making, you wanted to make that a bigger part of your existence, there's a great chance to embrace that as this month draws to a close. But if you are trying to tie down some Christmas arrangements, I feel those energies could mean that they could prove to be somewhat elusive as this month draws to a close. Have a great month, Virgo, and please do check out your year 2025 deep dive video by clicking on the link beneath this one.